Z30, and you can see the stems there. You can still keep grazing as long as you don't graze down and the sheep are not taking those off. So if you've got a fair bit of height on the crop and they're just nipping the tops off and you need to feed, that's still possible. And so using photographs, we can give people some idea of how much that biomass looks like. And so ultimately what we're trying to do is get all this into a little tool, a little Excel spreadsheet, where the grower or the consultant says, well, I'm here, my target yield is 4 tonnes, I'm on the 30th of July. You look up this and say, I've got half a tonne of biomass. Basically, will I get to a 5 tonne yield potential? And depending on your lock-up time, of course, you're going to need different amounts of residual biomass left. So we're trying to get all of our data for wheat and canola at least into a little tool like this. And at the moment, we have it out there in the hands of some people just testing it to see how accurate it is. And the same thing goes for canola. I haven't shown a lot about canola, but we've got all the same sorts of results for canola. And so, if I look at all the data that I could find on wheat and canola, so 134 experiments for wheat and 87 for canola. If I put a value on the forage in winter, and I put a value on the grain, if I take sort of rough prices, what you can see is this is a cumulative probability graph. So on average, this is what happens on average. This is what happens in the 10% of best years, and this is the 10% of worst years. So for wheat, if you graze wheat and you follow those principles, you almost always will make money compared to a ungrazed crop, because you can take the biomass away, make money out of the animals and not change the yield. In some circumstances, we did graze too hard, too late, and we lost some money. But you can see the potential. A lot of the time, the potential is to make a considerable amount of money above an ungrazed crop. For canola, fewer experiments, and we may have been learning along the way, but you can see canola, the grain yield, the grain is a bit more valuable, so any yield loss costs a bit more, and it may be a bit more sensitive to grazing than wheat. So, but look, in a quite a large proportion of years, we also could make reasonable money from grazing canola as well. So that's if you just compare an ungrazed canola paddock or wheat paddock with a grazed canola or wheat paddock, what money can you make? But of course it has whole farm implications, because while the animals are off the pastures and on the crops, the pastures are bulking up, and you're building a winter feed that you can go back to in the spring. So that's actually worth something in a mixed farming system, obviously. And we've done some work in Canberra where we had big areas of grazed canola, grazed wheat and pasture, and while the animals were on the crops, we measured what was happening on the pastures, and we got considerable pasture spelling benefits. So from a whole farm perspective, being able to put the animals on the crop in the winter is giving you some benefits. It's allowing you to increase effectively the winter stocking rate, the winter carrying capacity, which actually drives a lot of the profitability for the livestock enterprise. And this is a setup we had in Canberra. So we looked at the pasture spelling benefit. By having the canola and wheat in the system, you can also move the animals, from one crop onto the next, keep them off the pasture for a longer period. The canola is providing a break crop for the wheat. We got into this grazing canola initially because in the high rainfall zone, grazing wheats had no break crop, and they were just running into grass weeds. They had a horrible mess then, and they wanted to go back and establish a perennial pasture. They really needed a break crop, and canola can provide that, and as it turns out, you can graze the canola as well. In the low rainfall zone, we got into this because canola was just dropping out of the system because people thought it was risky. If you're on a mixed farm and you can make some money from grazing canola up front, it takes a bit of the risk out of it. You can keep it in the system, you can manage grass weeds and disease. So here's an example of a farmer at Greenthorpe. This is where we had our experiments for the last couple of years, John Kirkegaard, just to show you, the way he uses it. I asked him why. He said it's for quality feeders. My holding size halves and my stock numbers double. Which, I mean, he's really good at saying things succinctly. It's right. But this is his program. I mean, he's in an area where he can actually use some of the winter canolas. He can sow them in March. and he gets a lot of grazing off those. And the last 2 years, even with pretty dry springs, we've had stored soil moisture, pretty scratchy springs the last 2 years. Those winter canolas have matched the spring canolas sown later, so it's been really interesting. That's further west than I thought the winter canolas might have promised, but they've gone really well. He also grazes spring, and he grazes Gregory. These are some of the benefits for him. It's reduced his supplementary feeding. The main thing I think he said is it just allows him to buy a spring. You know, he's getting those crops in early. It just sets them up so well. If the spring turns dry, they're in a much better position than they would otherwise be. Provided you keep the flowering time in the right sort of window, you're in a better position to have that there. Some of the other places, I've just come back from Esperance. This guy farms, I think it's the very last farm along the coast before you hit the Nullarbor Plain, east of Esperance. These guys grow 35,000 hectares of crop, and they graze 10,000. They just graze canola, wheat, just keep moving. It's all cattle. They move the cattle around on the crops, and then when they come off the crops, they go onto tetraploid ryegrass. But he just grazes it all. It's all forage for his cattle. Every crop's a pasture. He and his brother doing really well. And he's been able to, I mean, there aren't many innovations in mixed farming where you can increase your crop and your stock and your livestock at the same time. And often those things are antagonistic. And closer to home, where I'm based in Canberra, the guys at Goulburn, essentially that was fine wool country. We do fine wool here. You can't grow canola here, is what Peter heard. And he used to grow fine wool only 10 years ago. And now he's got a whole lot of different things going on the farm. He's diversified quite significantly and doing well again. Much higher, much longer season there, so the winter types is what he's using. Manning wheat and the winter canolas. And some of these guys, you know, are finding that whole farm profitability is going up around $100 per farm hectare, so not per crop hectare, over the whole farm. This is the sort of increase that they're getting. So, in summary, dual-purpose crops are a great great fit for mixed farms. It's not your whole program; it'll just be a portion of your program. But if you can get some crops in early and move your whole sowing program earlier, your whole farm's going to get that sort of knock-on benefit. Please be ready. Please talk to your agronomist. There are withholding periods for herbicides. You don't want to walk into a mess with weeds, with weed control. So clean paddocks or have a plan for weed control. Pick the right variety for the sowing time to hit your flowering window. And think about the way you can have things coming on and being ready at different times. Because the longer you can keep the stock off the pastures in winter, the more they can bulk up, and you'll have that wedge of feed in spring, which will flow into your grazing business. When you are locking up, that'll be the most important decision you make. Make sure you lock up on time according to phenology, residual biomass and calendar time. And I think when things go bad, there are options. There's hay options, there's silage options, there's options to just graze them out. And to be honest, sometimes when you look at the benefit of that in terms of getting on top of some weeds, setting up a paddock for something the following year, those sorts of options, those sorts of circumstances can be looked upon as an opportunity to set up something for the following year. It need not be a disaster. Thank you.
Any questions?